I'm kidding here, of course. Good day, commissioners, delegates, observers, and the Secretariat. My name is Robert Sudam, and I'm from the US, and I am the outgoing chair of the scientific committee, of your scientific committee. I've chaired the SC during the past 3 years. And in 2019, we were able to meet in person in Nairobi. And I would like to again thank the government of Kenya for hosting our meeting in a very beautiful venue that made it very conducive to working hard and enjoying ourselves while we did so. Mr. Chair, as you just mentioned, the 2020 and the 2021 meetings were probably the most unusual meetings for the SC, most unusual meetings the SC has ever held, primarily because the meetings were held virtually. Despite the challenges of virtual meetings, we were able to make progress on many of our agenda items. Unfortunately, we weren't able to progress most of the highly technical items where in-person discussions are really necessary. Despite those challenges, one of the important benefits of holding meetings, virtual meetings, is that we opened up our meetings to many more people than have ever attended before. So in 2020, we had about 350 registered participants. And we blew that number away in 2021 when we had a record-breaking 600 participants. For those of you who don't know, scientific committee member meetings usually number about 200 people. And so having many more kind of took some of the mystique away, I think, of what the scientific committee actually does. We hope many of those scientists that joined us in the last 2 years will be able to continue to participate in scientific committee meetings in the future. So the reports from our meetings from all 3 years are available on the IWC website. And if any commissioners or delegates or observers have questions about what is in our reports, don't hesitate to send me an email and ask whatever questions you might have. I might not be able to answer them, but I can certainly point you in the right direction of the folks who can. I would like to highlight one urgent conservation problem that has been on the scientific committee's agenda for decades. The SC is very concerned about the critical status of vaquita in the Gulf of California as that species faces imminent extinction. So we call on the appropriate entities to do all that is possible to preserve vaquita. So we are now in the planning stages for the 2022 SC meeting, which is scheduled to meet in beautiful Bled, Slovenia in April and May of next year. And you have document VSM 2109 3.2.1-01 that outlines a draft agenda for the next year's meeting. And it provides an overview of the topics that we intend to discuss. Please keep in mind, it's a preliminary agenda. We've already received some questions about items that may be possibly missing from the agenda. So if any commissioners, delegations have other comments about the agenda, please let us know, as we will modify the agenda. And of course, everybody will be able to see another draft of the agenda near the end of this year or early in 2022. As I mentioned earlier, I am the outgoing chair of the scientific committee. Therefore, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce you to the incoming scientific committee chair, Alex Zerbini. Alex, wave. I see you. There we go. Thank you, Alex. Alex is from Brazil, and he has served as our vice chair during the past 3 years. And I'd like to thank him for his friendship and also for his tremendous amount of help during the past 3 years. I'd also like to introduce you to our new scientific committee vice chair, Lindsay Porter. I know Lindsay's there someplace too. Lindsay, if you have your camera on, wave to folks as well. Lindsay has been the convener for our small cetacean subgroup, and I'd like to thank her and the other conveners for their many contributions to the work of the scientific committee. We wouldn't be able to progress agenda items without the dedication of our conveners. So finally, I'd like to thank Ian Stanilan, who's the head of science and management, and I look forward to actually meeting Ian in person one of these days. We've attended a couple of meetings together, but I've never been in the same room. And I'd also like to thank the remainder of the IWC Secretariat for making it feasible and oftentimes even pleasurable for the scientific committee meetings, especially in the last 2 years that have been very challenging. So thank you again, Mr. Chair. The SC leadership team would be happy to answer any questions that the commissioners may have.
Thank you, Robert. I wish to extend our thanks on behalf of the entire Commission for the work you have done for 6 years as chair and vice chair of the scientific committee, and many years before as a member of the scientific committee. I'm particularly grateful to your leadership during very challenging times for the Commission, for this scientific committee. And now I open the floor for questions. I have already 3 requests for the floor. I'll start with the distinguished commissioner from Antigua and Barbuda. Please take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning again. Let me wholeheartedly congratulate our outgoing chair for the work that he has done in uncharted waters, you know. And in listening to you, Mr. Chair, the fact that the virtual meeting was able to command so much people to your attention is a sign that people are still interested in the work of the Commission, especially the scientific committee. And I think that you have done quite well to keep us together during the time of crisis that we're seeing. So congratulations to you. But I'd like to ask you a question, sir. With your experience and your contemplation of the scientific committee, to what extent do you think we can find a way to improve the work of the committee so that even us as commissioners can understand the importance of of the scientific committee mandate with regards to the whole issue of the management of whales and whaling. We have seen over the last many years where that part of the scientific committee work, like looking at the abundance of stocks and almost declaring a surplus that can be used as a quota, that has been put under the carpet. As outgoing chairman, tell me what is your feeling as a scientist and your yearning to see the IWC return to a situation of balance where the scientific committee can do the type of research that is necessary for us to assume our mandate, original mandate and current mandate.
Mr. Commissioner, thank you very much for that question. And I need to be careful here. And as I'm speaking from the scientific committee chair seat, I have my own personal opinion that I would love to talk to you about at some point over a drink. Maybe next year in Portoroz we could do so. The scientific committee has been working very, very hard on lots of issues related to whaling, related to conservation of whales generally. And I think one aspect of the scientific committee's work as it relates to whaling that's really a shining star is the development of strike limit algorithms that have been exhaustively tested, developed and tested to make sure that they give the right advice, even in different environmental conditions, or if for some reason the science isn't quite right and we just didn't realize it. And so Cherry Allison, Greg Donovan, and many other people worked very, very hard. Lots of other people contributed, of course, to make that that effort be successful. And it really truly makes it easier for the commission to make decisions about Aboriginal whaling. It makes it easier for the scientific committee to provide our recommendations and advice about those things. And your question also brings up the idea that I'm not sure that we do a great job of communicating what we actually do, just generally, but also very specifically in some of the work that we do. And in the past, we've developed a PowerPoint presentation that talks about the different committees and how they work. And there's probably a third of our committees that are truly looking at population estimates and making sure that we have good data on every stock of whales that's of interest that is dealt with by the commission. And we have a few others that are dealing with development of the strike limit algorithms or catch limit algorithms. And then there's some other groups that are dealing with some of those important conservation issues, that ship strikes and bycatch and ocean noise and those things that are important to all of us to make sure we conserve whales. So I've answered. Maybe I've answered a little bit too much, but we are working hard. And one thing that would be really helpful for us is in your meeting next year, we would love some additional guidance from the commission about what the scientific committee priorities should be and where we should focus our effort. That would be really helpful, especially as we contemplate perhaps moving to scientific committee meetings that only occur every 2 years. So additional guidance from the commission would be very helpful.
Thank you very much.
For the question, and Robert for the answer. Now I pass the floor to the distinguished commissioner of the United States. Please take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Robert, Dr. Sudam, for all of your hard work. It's good to see you. I know this wasn't exactly the tenure you signed up for, but you have handled it admirably and navigated us through really uncharted waters. And I can't thank you enough for your leadership and really appreciate everything that you've done. And welcome, of course, to Dr. Zabini, who I know is up to the task of filling your shoes. And we look forward to working with him in that coming role. I wanted to actually go back to your points regarding the vaquita. As you very well know, the vaquita is listed as critically endangered on the IUCN Red List. It's been brought to the brink of extinction due to bycatch, mostly in illegal gill nets. And I didn't want that statement to be lost from the scientific committee. If you look at the SC report from 68C, it talks about how you've been trying to bring this attention to this for over 3 decades. So the commission has endorsed over the years multiple resolutions, multiple decisions to have the recommendations of the scientific committee and the concerns of member governments transmitted to the government of Mexico. So consistent with that, I would just hope that the Secretariat and the chair would follow that past practice and share these concerns with the government of Mexico. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. And yes, we definitely will follow this practice and will address these concerns with the government of Mexico. Now I pass the floor to Austria, to the alternate commissioner from Austria. Michael, please take the floor.
Yes, thank you, Andre. In line with what the Commissioner of the United States just said, I think it's very telling and very important that the first and almost only substantive issue mentioned by the chair of the Scientific Committee was the vaquita. And I think it's important to pick up on that at this point, even though it may come up again later today. In many previous meetings, both in the framework of the Scientific Committee and the Commission itself, Austria has always strongly expressed its concern about the fate of the vaquita, a mammal, a large, clearly defined species living in a restricted, clearly defined area under the jurisdiction of a single great country. What does it say about us, about humankind, if we can't solve that problem? Apparently, the situation of the vaquita has not only not improved, but has actually worsened. And in the spirit of the opening statement of the EU, we might very well ask ourselves today how we will individually and collectively answer our children or grandchildren when they ask, what did you do to try to save the baiji, the vaquita, the North Atlantic right whale? I won't continue the list here. Did you really do everything in your power? At any rate, this may well be the IWC's last chance to make a statement while this species still exists. We therefore support the strongest possible letter being sent to all relevant parties involved in this issue and then made available to the general public. We have full trust in the IWC Secretariat to craft such a statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Now I have the distinguished commissioner from Iceland. Please take the floor.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the Scientific Committee Chair for his presentation and for the work of the committee that obviously he is not alone responsible for, but has been steering very well. And it is important to have good leadership in that group because, of course, the Scientific Committee work is of absolutely critical importance for this organization. If the Scientific Committee starts to become dysfunctional, then this organization as a whole really loses its purpose. So I think really the importance of the Scientific Committee cannot be overstated. And I would very much like to thank the participants there for their work. But the Scientific Committee chair mentioned that he has had had contact from several delegations regarding the agenda of future work of the Scientific Committee, and I would just like to highlight and remind him and his successor that Icelandic scientists are among those who have been in touch, and to basically just stress that I have full confidence in the leadership of the Scientific Committee and trust that the comments of the Icelandic scientists will be taken on board. And I see the nodding of the chair as confirmation of that, and I thank him for that. Having dealt with that particular issue, I'd like to move on actually to a completely separate issue, something that applies, in fact, not only to this agenda item, but even more so to the next two, and something that can be seen as applying really for the whole meeting. In some ways, you can say a disclaimer that hopefully will save us several lengthy discussions under various different agenda items. It's not really news to anyone who is familiar with this organization that we don't necessarily agree on everything, or don't even necessarily agree on the basis of everything. So if I might be just allowed to read out a short text, which I will then send to the Secretariat for inclusion in the report, which is simply setting out the opinion of Iceland and in fact many other members, albeit not everyone. And I recognize that, and I stress that I'm not intending to say that this is the opinion of all the parties to the IWC. I realize it is not. But the statement is as follows. Several of the issues addressed by the IWC and its subsidiary bodies are, in the opinion of many IWC members, outside the organization's legal competence under the ICRW. The fact that these IWC members do not block decisions on work being undertaken relating to those issues should not be understood to affect that understanding of the IWC's legal competence. I think if that is simply made clear in the report of the meeting, it is simply setting out the opinion which I take for granted that all members are very familiar with. It is setting out the opinion of many of the members, albeit certainly not all. I think, again, that hopefully will save us having to raise different points on different parts of the agenda. So with that, I simply thank you.
Thank you very much. Also on the statement, as this is the statement of several contracting governments, I have no difficulty to include the statement in the report. I understand it will be valid for several agenda items today, and I think that is a good solution for, as you said, saving us some time that otherwise we will need to spend on this. So thank you very much. Now I will pass the floor to the distinguished Commissioner from Argentina. Please take the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Muy brevemente, queremos felicitar a Robert Sweden por su excelente presidencia del Comité Científico. Reconocemos los enormes esfuerzos que hizo para poder funcionar bajo circunstancias totalmente excepcionales. Y bueno, queremos expresar nuestra gratitud y admiración por el trabajo que ha realizado. También queremos felicitar a Alex Servini, que pasa a ser el primer presidente del comité latinoamericano. Es un orgullo para nuestra región tenerlo en esta posición y expresamos todo nuestro apoyo y nuestra plena disposición para contribuir al mejor éxito de sus tareas. También queremos felicitar a Lindsay Porter por su vicepresidencia. Y, en fin, eso es todo, señor presidente. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Now I have the distinguished commissioner from Australia. Nick, please take the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and it's a delight to be in session 3, not at midnight or 3 a.m. So for us in Australia, it's 5 p.m. and we can enjoy a glass of wine during the meeting. So it's nice to join in a more civilized time zone. I wanted to, well, I thank Robert and add my voice to all of those who have quite rightly thanked Robert for all the work he has done over many years now. And it's already been noted that he's had a particularly complex task given the COVID-19 and the virtual meetings. But I did want to draw attention to an equally difficult task that he and with his vice chair, Alex Sabini, have also had to handle, and that is the very difficult budgetary situation of the Commission over the last few years. And I think it's important that everyone knows that Robert and Alex in that role were fierce champions of the scientific committee, its work, and the importance of funding it. And Australia has had the role of convening the discussions around budget and seeking savings and having very difficult conversations with members of the Secretariat and members of the Scientific Committee and the broader membership of the Commission about where those savings can be found. And to their absolute credit, Robert and Alex, having fought desperately hard to manage the impact of budget cuts on the Scientific Committee, have worked really cooperatively in difficult circumstances. And I want to personally thank them. They're both close friends of mine, and as well as much admired colleagues from me. And I thank them for all of that on the record. And those have not been easy conversations. It's a huge job to step up as chair and indeed vice chair for the Scientific Committee. It's a massive task, goes on for quite a while, longer in Robert's case, but we're very grateful that they do so. So thank you, Robert. Thank you, Alex, and also welcome to Lindsay Porter as vice chair. We're in very safe hands with the incoming chair and the vice chair as well. And I thank them all for their very hard work. And I will just finish off by adding Australia's voice to the importance of the Commission's action on Walte. And we fully support the work that we've been, the Scientific Committee and the Commission more broadly has been engaged with on this front for now many years. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Chair, can I respond to Nick's comments?
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you. Nick and everybody else who has spoken previously, your comments are greatly appreciated. I wanted to briefly comment on the budget issue, though, and our past chair, Caterina Fortuna, who I think is in the session today, and it's good to see you here, Caterina. That in 2018 we struggled with substantial budget cuts, and Caterina really set the tone for SC leadership fighting hard for budget for the SC so that we can continue to provide advice to the Commission. And so I just wanted to recognize Caterina's contributions and help, and we've missed her for sure in the last couple of years. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Robert. Now I pass the floor to the distinguished commissioner from Mexico. Lorenzo, please take.
Gracias, señor presidente. Y bueno, solo para hacer eco de todos los comentarios positivos a la extraordinaria labor y la muy difícil situación que le tocó a Roberto vivir. Es un amigo de hace años y la joya de la corona es el comité científico en el comité de conservación, y Robert la ha pulido y mejorado bastante. Entonces, darle las gracias. Me da mucho gusto que venga Alex, otro amigo de muchos años, como futuro presidente del comité científico. Era un trabajo extraordinario. Y desde luego Lindsay, que demostró mucho talento para llevar el subcomité de pequeños detalles, que siempre tiene una carga brutal de trabajo y siempre la cumplió muy a tiempo. Entonces, muchas gracias por todo su esfuerzo y por reconocer también el trabajo que ha tenido, que creo que se lo merece. Gracias, Robert, Alex, Lindsay. Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much. The next one on my list is the distinguished alternate commissioner from Brazil. Please take the floor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd only like to join the choir of just praises and congratulate both the outgoing chair of the scientific committee and the incoming chair and the vice chair. I also join my Argentinian colleague in we're also proud we'll have a Latin American and a Brazilian in the chairmanship of the scientific committee. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I have the distinguished commissioner from St. Lucia. Horace, please take the floor.
Thank you very much. Good morning to you and all those other people who've been waking up very early. Where we are, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. And I heard that it's 5 in the afternoon in Australia, so that's nice. Chairman of the Scientific Committee, you've been doing wonderful work. You and your team, your vice chair. I noticed that we've done a lot of work as it relates to SLAs and CLAs. And I would like you to give us an indication as to what your recommendations would be to the Commission as you juxtapose the information that you have with the moratorium that has been placed on whaling for so many years. I mean, we've been around for many years and we remember when the moratorium was placed, and we were supposed to revisit it. 10 years, 20 years went by, and we've done all of the science. So my question is, where do we go with the information we have as it relates to the moratorium? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, I just have to remind you that we have to keep also a bit an eye on the time of the meeting. So I would ask you also to have in mind this when now asking again for, or when asking for the floor, or having the interventions. I'll pass the floor still to a few commissioners, and then I'll ask Robert to respond to several of the questions. The next one on the list is the distinguished commissioner from Peru. Please take the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Dado que es la primera oportunidad en la que hago uso de la palabra en esta sesión abierta, quisiera expresarle mi felicitación por el liderazgo que viene demostrando en los trabajos de la Comisión Ballenera Internacional. Quisiera en esta oportunidad reconocer el trabajo arduo que ha realizado el presidente saliente del Comité Científico. Sabemos que no han sido años fáciles con esta pandemia. Sin embargo, ha realizado una estupenda labor. Nosotros consideramos que el Comité Científico y la labor que realiza es de fundamental importancia para la Comisión Ballenera Internacional, en la medida que el trabajo que se hace sustenta y sirve de sustento para las decisiones que se adoptan en favor de los objetivos de la Comisión, ¿no? Queremos aprovechar también la oportunidad para felicitar a Alex Servini por asumir la presidencia del comité. Nos orgullece que un representante de la región como Brasil sea ahora quien va a liderar los trabajos del comité científico, y desde ya queremos también expresarle todo nuestro apoyo. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you. The next is the distinguished commissioner from Norway. Please take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the Scientific Committee and to Robert for chairing the committee in a good humored and effective way. As has been expressed by many now, the Scientific Committee is the cornerstone of our organization, and it should be the bridge into the future that could keep the IWC together in a meaningful way. I'm going to limit myself to expressing this and expressing support to the intervention given by Iceland. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I pass the floor now to the distinguished commissioner from Guinea-Bissau. Please take the floor.
Buenos días, señor presidente. Bueno, durante el primer día de esta reunión, he hecho un apelo en el sentido de permitir que en la próxima reunión nosotros tengamos la traducción en portugués. Porque este tema de la biodiversidad marina también nos interesa mucho, por sermos un país costero y con una diversidad muy rica. Yo soy biólogo marino y también profesor en una de las universidades en Guinea-Bissau. Entonces, tengo mucho interés sobre este asunto. Y quería felicitar al presidente del comité científico por su presentación. Y por otro lado, decir que los cetáceos tienen un comportamiento muy complejo desde el punto de vista de reproducción y de su alimentación. Los informes de la UICN del año 2017 ha destacado una gran preocupación sobre el estado de diferentes poblaciones de estos grupos. Y dentro de ese informe, de acuerdo con ese informe, casi 24 especies no hay información. No hay información sobre la población de 24 especies de algunos grupos de cetáceos. Lo que quería decir es que en los últimos años, en las pesquerías industriales de Guinea-Bissau, la captura accidental de cetáceos ha aumentado mucho. En la pesquería industrial en nuestras aguas. Lo que quería saber del presidente del comité científico, las informaciones científicas y los datos estadísticos que tienen, se cubren toda esta zona del continente africano. Porque creo que es importante que tengamos toda esa información para una mayor planificación y la gestión de este grupo. Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much. I will still pass the floor to the distinguished commissioner from the Dominican Republic, and then I will ask Robert to answer. And I would just like to remind the participants that the order in which interventions are taken is the member governments first, then non-member governments, then intergovernmental organizations, and then NGOs. So I would ask those who are not the member governments at the moment to unraise your hands, or we will unraise your hands, and I will call for your interventions when member governments have ended their interventions. Commissioner from Dominican Republic, please take the floor.
Muy buenos días, señor presidente. Espero que me escuchan. Gracias. Muy buenos días a todos en cualquier lugar de donde nos acompañan. Unimos al agradecimiento por la labor realizada por el Comité Científico y por todos sus miembros en estos últimos años. Estamos muy complacidos de poder compartir con ustedes el interés de la República Dominicana en ampliar nuestra participación ante la Comisión Ballenera Internacional, ya que hemos trabajado arduamente en mecanismos efectivos para la conservación de los ecosistemas, las especies y la diversidad genética, con el fin de la detención de la pérdida de la biodiversidad marina. Por lo que hoy en día, como es de su conocimiento, el país cuenta con importantes espacios para conservación de ballenas a nivel internacional, tales como Santuario de Mamíferos Marinos, de Banco de la Plata y la Navidad. También se desarrollan actividades de manejo sustentable de áreas marinas bajo diferentes categorías de protección a nivel nacional y a nivel de acuerdos regionales. En ese sentido, nos honraría poder participar de manera más activa en los órganos subsidiarios de la Comisión Ballenera Internacional, tanto en comité científico como en el comité de conservación. Agradecemos el espacio que nos han brindado para expresar nuestro interés. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Now I'll pass the floor to Robert to give his feedback on those interventions and questions. Please, Robert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, maybe I'll address the comment from the commissioner from Guinea-Bissau, and that you're indeed right. There is lots of information that we don't have about many species, and in particular in Africa. And so I know currently that the IWC and COMAFET are trying to develop a relationship where the scientific committee can help build capacity in Africa for being able to collect data that will be important for monitoring the status, assessing the status of cetaceans in Africa. And so that's certainly the case with other countries and other areas, that if there are ways that the scientific committee can help and support work that's happening in countries, we would be happy to try to find some of our volunteers to contribute that way. The question from the commissioner from St. Lucia is a little bit of a more difficult one. Thank you, Horace, for that question about the moratorium. And I think my answer really relates to kind of what I mentioned earlier, that the scientific committee would like guidance from the commission on what you would like us to do, what you would like us to focus on. The process that we've developed for providing advice about Aboriginal hunts, in my mind, is an outstanding work that is very, very helpful in providing objective advice that's based on data, that's based on current data, to ensure that the populations of whales continue to increase, while the needs for Aboriginal communities are also met. And so if the commission wants us to work on strike limit algorithms or catch limit algorithms that might be related to whaling, we certainly have the experience. We've made lots of progress on those kind of topics in the past. And so we look for your guidance. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I've answered the questions, tried to answer the questions that have been presented.
Yes, thank you very much, Robert. I will still pass the floor to the next three requests from the member governments. And colleagues, it is clear that we didn't meet now for 3 years. The scientific committee has a very important and interesting work to do, and I understand that you would like to discuss many important items. I'm afraid that today that won't be possible, so I would kindly ask you now to slowly end this agenda item or end this debate, as it was intended only to present the brief information. And I understand that that's Robert's 6 years period, so people are keen to reflect this whole period. I'm sure Robert will be open to all your suggestions, questions, opportunities to do a chat or to do a separate meeting. So as far as possible, maybe you can use also these opportunities. I would tend to pass now the intervention to the distinguished commissioner from Senegal. Then I have 2 more requests for the floor. And then I would slowly close the list of requests for
Sénégal. Je commence par dire qu'il n'y a pas de traduction française. Ah, ok. Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je commencerai par préciser qu'on n'a pas la traduction française, nous les francophones. Et ça, c'est important pour nous. Sur ce, donc, je voudrais saisir cette intervention donc, du comité scientifique, que je félicite au passage du travail abattu, pour poser donc un problème que j'avais déjà envoyé par mail au secrétariat en ce qui concerne l'échouage donc de certains cétacés depuis quelques 2 mois de manière fréquente au niveau des plages du Sénégal. Je veux dire qu'il y a des cétacés donc que l'on voit comme ça apparaître au niveau des plages, parfois qui sont complètement morts et parfois qui ne sont pas morts. Et vous savez donc que le Sénégal donc n'est pas un pays donc de pêche donc de la baleine. Et donc sur ce donc on voudrait vraiment si la CBI plus précisément à son comité scientifique pour faire donc des choses pour comprendre donc mieux ce phénomène. D'autant plus donc que vous savez donc
ici en train de laisser bien avant de contacter chez
d'autant plus que vous savez que
je crois que c'est au niveau de chez contacter le D parce que moi j'ai le français ici. Bien avant qu'ils comprennent, moi je sais déjà de quoi.
L'objectif donc de ce comité est de protéger donc ces cétacés. Donc il est normal si donc un tel phénomène donc se produit dans un pays donc qui ne maîtrise pas donc la pêche, qui ne fait même pas donc la pêche de baleine, donc encore moins donc maîtrisée. Donc on est censé donc vous informer de cette situation tout en espérant donc des dispositions idoines seront prises avant que donc le phénomène peut-être ne puisse prendre donc d'autres ampleurs. Donc c'est ce donc je vous remercie tout en espérant donc des dispositions donc seront prises donc le rapidement possible.
Merci beaucoup. I apologize that we lost the translation from French and into French. We will try to resolve this very soon.
Mark, do we need to take a break or?
I would announce a technical break of 5 minutes so that we can get the French translation back. So we are back in 5 minutes.
Hi, Shay. Yes, I can hear you now.
Hello?
Are you ready to go now? Into English.